Well, hello there. How are you doing? It's me, a kitty. Cat. Maybe? Yes. Yes, it is. I was recently. Oh, this is a completely new playthrough, apparently. I thought I was continuing on another one, but apparently this is a new playthrough where I have 20 flasks because of cheat. I am curious, do I have any cheaty equipment? No, my equipment isn't cheaty. Why is this at 20 then? I don't know. Oh well, it's fine. Let's go run and level up. Because we got to get to the lady. And these guys are going to ignore me right now because I wanted to talk. Look at them. They are very pretty though, aren't they? You know, you could buff out a lot of these scratches. Anyway, I was recently thinking a lot about like chaos and like the underlying nature of reality. And I was thinking it was kind of interesting. Part of what started me thinking about this was that I was listening to Matt Christman and I wish I could remember the other guy's name. Honestly, I only clicked on it because it said Matt Crispin, and I like Matt Crispin. But they were talking about a couple of John Carpenter movies, and John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors because he makes good movies. He makes a couple of weird movies too that I'm not really too sure about, but he makes a lot of good movies. But anyway, I was watching, and they were talking about Prince of Darkness, and they were kind of talking about like the concept that maybe there's like an evil or anti-god because that's part of the concept in the movie, and like this kind of like notions of chaos and things like that, right? And the thing that was interesting about that to me was that I kind of feel like people don't talk about this a lot, but it does seem to me that there's just like an underlying nature of chaos. Like I read the Chaos book by James Glick, and it just kind of is it Gleek Glick Gleick. Anyway, it made a lot of sense to me, and I was just thinking about like the underlying nature of reality is that it is an appearance of order. There is an appearance of order that we specifically create, right? Like we look into the world and we try to make order in it because a truly chaotic world doesn't really make sense to our big old brains. Our big old, I mean, it makes sense to me, but that's because I'm an eldritch creature. But you know, like for most like humans, it doesn't really make much sense, right? But like that order is kind of an illusion. Like there's a certain level where once you get down to like, and you know, people always talk about quantum mechanics. I'm not gonna pretend I know that much about quantum mechanics. I just know a few things. But like once you start talking about like concepts like turbulence, right? Like eventually, pretty much all systems break down, and predictive systems only work so good at being predictive, right? Like you can only pinpoint things to a certain degree of accuracy, and a lot of what we have is just approximations that are useful in our everyday life. Like they work in our everyday life, but like it's also like they don't represent the fundamental truth of reality, right? Like our brains, well your brains I guess more, look at things and they attempt to establish order over things that are inherently chaotic. And I think that the entirety of this system, as in the entirety of reality, is in some sense has like underlined by chaos. It's underlined by things just sort of happening, just causality, right? And you get into things too where like a lot of this also stems from perception, where like if you start talking about things like on the quantum level, eventually like just observing them can mess with them, right? um I will accept your Honda Accord, lady. Yes, that is the joke. Thank you for the whistle. I get to ride around on Torrent now. I will treat him with respect. I also level up because I have a bunch of soul. I'm guessing I don't remember giving myself. I don't remember this. I have not played Elden Ring in about a hot minute. Let's do. I always like doing that. I'm gonna level up Dex a little bit because I'm a nerd. What is mind? Does that just increase? I guess that just increases my FP. I mean, adding more FP is always good. I get to 1,000 health. Good enough. Yeah, so there's like this there's this fundamental difference between like the way we look at reality versus the way reality kind of is, right? And we can affect reality by our mere perception of it. But I would almost go so far as to call into question the existence of a reality. Like, on some level, all of this is just perception, right? Like, if you don't perceive something, is it there? It's like, it goes back to that old question of, like, if a tree falls over in the woods, did it make a sound? Or, like, does I kind of fucked that up. For some reason, the version my brain wanted to go with was if a bear farts in the woods and no one was around to hear it, did it really fart in the woods? But it's stuff like that that's very interesting to me, and just thinking about like kind of how like what what I oh wait, wasn't there an invisible guy? Because I can't see you, dude. I can't look in your eyes because there are no eyes. Much like reality. But yeah, that is like kind of one of the interesting things to think about. Like, is there really such a thing as reality, or is it just like it's just like you, or is it all just like a series of perceptions that we then interpret? Is reality interpretation? And it's an interesting question because on some level it does seem like reality is just interpretation, because reality, like the idea that there is a fundamental thing, that this is fundamental on some level, I don't really know how well that works once you get past certain practical applications. Like for the practical, you have to sort of believe in like there being a fundamental reality. Like with science, for instance, you can get to a certain extent. You can like learn new things and things can grow. But I'm very skeptical of the idea that science will ever understand everything. In fact, I think that is basically taken the place of a lot of people's religion at this point, where like they basically. I'm sorry, were you looking for me? You have a weird face. You look like a bat person. But like science has become a lot of people's kind of religionists. They're like, well, as long as scientists say it, it's true. It's like, well, there's plenty of examples of scientists like just like fucking up, right? Or just doing things they probably shouldn't. I mean, I always go back to the whole atomic bomb thing, where like, yeah, there is a real possibility, or at least they thought there was a real possibility that they would just set the atmosphere on fire, and they went through and did it anyway. Like, I mean, ultimately, right? Scientists are just people, and they use the tools they have and the perceptions they have to gain knowledge and stuff like that. But like in this day and age, and pretty probably forever, really, it's not just that, because scientists have motivations that aren't just understanding reality. I just want to understand reality. No, like there's grant money, there's like fudging of the rules. I mean, if you look into like health studies, you can look at how many. Oh, fuck off with your. Shut up. I don't care about your talking. I will help you. Maybe. Although he works for the Order, and I'm just talking against the Order. I'm talking about against the Order of reality right now. Okay. I think that's everything he has to say. Yes, yes. I don't want to kiss goodbye from you. Ugh. Look at him. Ugh. Ugh. But I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That's rude. But yeah, on some level, if reality is just consciousness too, which I kind of lean more and more towards that, one would have to think, ooh, hello. Nope. There we go. Don't know why I got that. Now I'm taking any damage. But yeah, like it's kind of like like there's a fundamental chaos in reality. There's just like a fundamental kind of like underlying nonsense. Why are all these trees just kind of dancing? Why are the trees dancing? Is this chaos? Is this God? Yeah, probably. But I mean, oh yeah, that's right. That's what I was saying. Like because there is still the difference between like ooh, thank you. Like the like there is still the practical element of it, but yeah, scientists are flawed, and that doesn't, and you shouldn't. And honestly, anytime, especially if you're not trained in science, if they just if you read something in the news, like for instance, like there was a it was a long time ago, I think, but they were talking about like they teleported a photon, I think it was. They teleported some kind of particle, and then like the news said teleportation possible. It's like these are two fundamentally different things, right? But that's another thing. Like scientists are affected by their perceptions, their views, their beliefs just as much as anybody else. Like the idea that they're just going to be completely objective and never fuck up. It's like pretty silly. And yes, science is nice if you can replicate it. And there's a lot of sites that you can replicate. So it's not that it's completely useless. And I'm not talking about like the idea that well you have to give up on everything because nothing will ever truly make sense and nothing will ever truly represent reality. But it is something to consider. It's something to consider, especially when you start talking about like worldviews, right? Like once you start talking about worldviews, because worldviews are just built from our own perception and our own understanding of chaos and order. In a lot of ways, they're like coping mechanisms. They're like coping mechanisms to try and understand the grandness, the vastness around us. I mean, I personally think that if you literally believe that the universe was created for human beings, I think that's a more than a little silly. You know, like that implies that literally everything is built for us, and but yet we can't just like fly between planets or teleport or something like that. And and this kind of goes back to another point I wanted to make, which is that I think we constantly have this desire to talk about what the universe is for, a utility of sorts, right? It's not just a view about like, oh well, you know, this is probably what's happening. It's like, no. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a reason. And I'm personally of the opinion that you're just never really going to get a satisfying reason. You're never going to get a reason that will truly satisfy you the way you want to be satisfied with one of those answers. A lot of these answers are just things that, like, if you knew them, they probably wouldn't do very much for you. I mean, it's sort of like when you start coming to certain arguments for creation versus the idea of just like this kind of just spontaneously happening. All this shit, like you're never gonna get a satisfactory answer. You might get an answer that will satisfy you at least briefly, but I find that a lot of people who come to one conclusion or another tend to have to reinforce. They tend to have to come back to it. Now, part of the only reason I don't have to do that very often is because I've had several experiences that are very difficult to ignore. But I mean, it's also kind of a. From what I've seen, we are all connected, and all reality and all things are in some sense connected, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that there's a purpose behind it. This is part of what I find interesting about like Kashmiri Shaivism in particular. The idea that all of this, we're always coming up with the grand purposes, like for what all like why does all of this exist? Like what if God's real, why did God create all this? Oh, well, God hates us. Oh, God loves us. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I do think that God on some level loves us. I don't think God is truly capable of. Well, I don't know if truly capable of hate. It's kind of difficult. I don't know. I'm not really sure on that front. But like the idea that this is all just the divine play. This is all just like here for Shiva to experience things. Oop, that's very slow. Are they always that slow? Hmm. Interesting. I don't know why I targeted this rock man, but I did. He's now Goop Man, but he'll be back. It's fine. He is Goop Lord. Hello, Goop Lord. Centipede. I like never really do the crafting in this game. Like even when I'm doing like a completely legitimate playthrough, I like never do the crafting. But yeah, the idea that this is all just like the divine Leela. This is all just like Shiva just playing out and just like, oh, I just want to experience what this is like. Oh, I want to experience suffering. Oh, I want to experience not suffering. Oh, I want to experience enlightenment. Oh, I want to experience me. Like that's fundamentally very interesting to me. Well, for a variety of reasons. Like I wrote a very big fictional universe with a lot of fantasy elements, but that was ultimately kind of the point. Was just like God was just like experience, like the creator of everything was just like, having experiences, just like experiencing things and watching, and just being a part of all of this. So fundamentally, once I like read about like the whole idea of like the divine Leela, I was just like, okay, that's interesting. Interesting that we both kind of came to similar conclusions. Although mine was in a fantasy trope, so whatever. But that's like probably one of the only explanations that's ever really made sense to me. Like, I'm at a point where I have to believe in God because of certain experiences I've had and certain developments I've had and all stuff like that. Like I have to on some level. But there's a lot of stuff that comes along with ideas like this goes back to the whole idea of like order. The thing about religion is that religion attempts to establish a spiritual order. It attempts to take the ineffable, the divine, the beyond all, the beyond the beyond, right? And it attempts to codify it in such a way that you can understand it. So I think that can be kind of useful, but at the same time, the divine is far too beyond that. The divine is not just the ultimate order, it is also the ultimate chaos. It is beyond all of this, right? So eventually what you're left with is the idea that even God is in some sense chaos. It is this thing that we constantly personify as order is actually also chaos. So that just begs the question, can you find hello Mr. Crab or Miss Crab? I can't really tell. You are certainly something. I am glad you are enjoying your foods. But like that does start to also beg the question, well, what do you mean? What does that mean? What does it mean like God is the ultimate chaos? Why do we constantly try to personify God as order? If God is everything, then wouldn't God also, yes, be the chaos? So this is also part of the reason I think Kali was so attractive to me. Kali seems to understand, like as like just, and I'm talking about like as the concept of Kali. it part of the reason it makes so much sense to me is because that is like death and time and expansion and destruction and entropy. It's all of those things. Like Ma Kali represents these things beautifully. I love Krishna. I love a lot of things about Krishna, but Krishna kind of fundamentally to me represents certain ideas about reality that are very useful for some people, but like I personally find Ma Kali more useful for my own thought process and things like that. And here's the other thing: a lot of this could just be my perception. Like the perception I have is that there's this fundamental like chaos underlining all things. That order is kind of an illusion on some level, but like you can still like live like a decent life, for instance, if you just is there anything down there? There's like an item or something down there. Well, there appears to be a glowy. So, I mean, but that then starts to beg a lot of questions about like, well, how do you live your life then? Do you just basically find what works for you and go for it? I mean, on some level, yes. I would argue that attempting to connect to God is probably your best bet in any case, whether you're doing that through like Christianity, Sufism, Hinduism, Buddhism, blah 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 blah, blah or just like I'll just say connection to the divine because you could consider the divine a non-theistic entity if you wanted to. Um, like connecting with that, like the most real thing that is there, right? These guys have very silly outfits. Like they're scary and annoying because their bows really hurt, but look, they just look silly. Why did you make them look so silly? But I mean, like, I also feel like on some level, just embracing and understanding the chaos is very. It really helps. I've found with personal relationships in the sense that just like if you embrace the idea that people are just part of this chaotic system, don't know what they're doing, and are constantly trying to make sense of things that probably don't really make sense, or at least will never really make sense to like an ape brain. Like I personally find it very helpful in dealing with people because a lot of people are kind of silly. Hi, Piggy. If this could see me, it would be angry. Rawr, 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 rawr. So, I mean, I frequently go back to ideas like the Buddha's unanswered questions, like the whole idea of like is the universe eternal or not, or is what happens to the Buddha after he died, blah blah blah, blah all this stuff. I don't really think a lot of that is, ooh, a little bit choppy there. Ooh, well, what's going on? That's weird. Never had that before. I don't know, my computer's gonna explode. But like, I got distracted by what the hell is that? Their weapons are weird too. Okay, actually, the bones. The bows are fine, but a lot of their like antler stuff, I'm really just really, I don't know. I just think it looks silly. Went to a Renaissance festival recently. There's a lot of dudes with like Viking helmets on, and that was they just look silly to me. I don't know, like but like not like real Viking helmets, not like actual Viking helmets, but like the cartoony kind. Which I mean, I'm pretty sure is an invention of like Wagner. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, like understanding like and kind of embracing the chaos, I think is somewhat helpful to people in general. I don't necessarily think that you can't believe in order and have it work with you on a certain extent. Like there is the order of like, okay, so if I press this button, I'll swing. If I press this If I press this, I'll turn around. Like that, there is a like level of order there of this like practical's nature. But it's like once you start looking from here to there, like the vastness, like once you start like really looking at like the vastness of reality, if we're I just keep using the word reality because it's like said a billion times in these John Carpenter movies. Well, it's said a billion times in Mouth of Madness. But anyway, this is reality. I mean, like that's another thing. Like humans are just fundamentally like these silly creatures. Just very silly. They say and do very silly things all the time, right? And then you're supposed to be like taking all these guys seriously. It's like, well, no, humans are just like these kind of like they're nice enough, and a lot of them are nice enough, but like they're also just these silly, greedy, selfish creatures that like you have to kind of awaken on some level to get them. And I don't just mean like spiritually awaken, but just like awaken them in general for them to really treat other people better. Like, yeah, there is a certain fundamental goodness in mankind, but there's also a lot of like sort of negativity and sort of like a lack of understanding and a lack of desire to help other people. Like a lot of selfishness. A lot of things that humans do are just for appearances, as far as I've been able to tell. So on some level, a lot of this is just like going to be very chaotic. It's just going to be chaotic. There's not really much of a way around it. A lot of it is about creating individual order within our own lives and attempting to embrace the thing that is the higher order, or at least for me, it's like embracing the thing that is the higher order, which is God, because God is probably like the only thing you're going to get like real order out of. And even then it's like a very it's not an order as we would understand it. It is an order that is mixed with chaos. Like we have these visions of things as if they're like fundamentally opposed to one another, when in some sense, if you look at them on the large enough scale, they are the same thing. They are the same. Like chaos and order are basically the same thing, right? So then, if I look at it from that angle, I could say there is a great order about things, but it's like an order that is fundamentally intertwined with chaos. I don't know. I guess I was just thinking about all this different stuff, and it's pretty interesting to me to think about like yeah, there's the practical notion of every day. Like if you do X Y Z, you can expect things to basically work for the most part, right? But they don't necessarily always work. Did I touch? I'm almost certain I did touch that grace, didn't I? But anyway, I don't know. Those are just some thoughts I was having in my big old brain, and I like to share them. My big cat brain. Cat brain and tentacles. Cat brain and tentacles. Oh no, you're gonna be a wenticle tentacle. In reality, we're all tentacles. Tentacles of the great divine. Wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, wiggle. Okay. I don't know. Just felt like sharing that. I hope you all have a great day. And if you're not having a great day, I hope it gets greater. Bye bye.